Two orphan brothers escape from the orphanage and help a mysterious elderly woman along the way. But what seems like a simple act of kindness leads them to a secret so surprising that it changes the course of their lives forever. You will be moved by this story. Imagine living in a place where each day feels like an endless struggle, where dreams are replaced by silence and cold walls. This was the world of Liam and Noah since they lost their parents in a tragic car accident. The brothers, aged 14 and 10, were left at the mercy of a system that cared little for their dreams and hopes. At St. Mary's Orphanage in a small town in the heart of the United States, the future seemed as dark as the lonely nights they spent gazing through barred windows. Liam, the older brother, had always been the protector. With deep eyes and a determined heart, he bore the responsibility of keeping the promise he made to his parents, to take care of Noah no matter what happened. Noah, with his innocent smile and endless questions about the world outside, was the light that kept Liam standing even on the toughest days. On that cold winter morning, while the wind howled outside, Liam watched Noah trying to fix an old toy he had found in the orphanage's garbage. He knew that this was no life for them. They needed to get out of there. They needed a fresh start. "Liam, do you think we will ever find a place where we can be happy?" Noah asked, his eyes shining with hope. Liam hesitated for a moment but replied firmly, "We will, Noah. I promise." That same night, while everyone was sleeping, Liam and Noah put into action the plan they had been devising for weeks. With silent steps, they crossed the orphanage's corridors, avoiding the guards and escaping through the pantry window. The snow covered the ground, and the cold cut like a blade, but the freedom they felt was stronger than any discomfort. "Liam, where are we going?" Noah asked, tightening the old scarf he wore to protect himself from the cold. "To wherever the world takes us, Noah. As long as we are together, everything will be all right," Liam replied. The brothers wandered through the deserted streets of the town, aimless, without a destination. As they crossed a snow-covered park, something caught Noah's attention. A small, hunched figure struggling to push a shopping cart loaded with bags. It was an elderly woman, alone, fighting against the weight of the cart and the relentless cold. "Liam, she needs help," Noah exclaimed, pointing at the woman. Liam hesitated. They were on the run, vulnerable, and with nothing to offer, but Noah's pleading gaze convinced him. They approached the woman. "Excuse me, ma'am, can we help?" Liam asked gently. The elderly woman, surprised, turned slowly. Her face was weathered by time, and her eyes were full of mystery, but there was something warm in her expression. "Would you do this for an old woman like me?" she asked with a shy smile. "Of course," Noah replied, already holding the cart. The brothers helped the woman to her home, a small cabin hidden among trees on the outskirts of town. It was a simple but welcoming place. When they arrived, she invited them in. "You must be freezing. Come in, have some hot tea," the woman said, waving her hand for them to enter. Liam hesitated again, but the smell of something warm and the promise of shelter for at least one night were irresistible. They sat around a lit fireplace, and for a moment, they felt something that resembled a home. "My name is Margaret, but you can call me Maggie," the elderly woman said, serving cups of tea to the brothers. "And you? What are you doing out here all alone in this cold?" Liam exchanged a quick glance with Noah. They didn't know if they could trust Maggie, but something about her felt safe. They decided to tell part of the truth. "We are Liam and Noah. We are looking for a place to stay, just for a while," Liam replied cautiously. Maggie looked at them for a long moment, as if she could see beyond the words. Then she gave a mysterious smile. "You know, boys, sometimes people come into our lives for a reason we don't always understand right away. Stay here tonight. Tomorrow we can talk more." As they settled into a small makeshift room, Liam couldn't hold back the question that lingered in his mind. Noah, do you trust her? Yes, Liam. I think she is different, Noah replied. The next morning, the timid rays of the sun filtered through the heavy curtains of the small cabin, filling the space with a soft and welcoming light. Liam was the first to wake up. For a moment, he thought it had all been a dream, but looking around and seeing Noah sleeping peacefully next to him, he realized they were really there, away from the orphanage's bars. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the room, guiding Liam's steps to the kitchen. There was Maggie, wearing a worn apron, humming a melody that seemed as old as she was. "Good morning, Liam," she said without looking back, as if she already knew he was there. "I hope you slept well." "Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much for letting us stay," he replied, sitting at the table. Despite still being suspicious, something about Maggie made him feel safe, as if she had an invisible power to turn fear into comfort. Noah soon appeared, rubbing his eyes and smiling when he saw the table set with bread, eggs, and a jug of juice. He sat next to Liam and began to eat with enthusiasm. "You are very close brothers, aren't you?" Maggie asked, watching them as she stirred the coffee. Liam just nodded, but Noah, always cheerful, replied, "Liam has always taken care of me. He says that we only need each other to be happy." Maggie smiled, but there was a sadness hidden in her eyes, as if those words had awakened something inside her. "And you guys, what's the plan now?" she asked, changing the tone to something more practical. Liam stopped chewing and looked at Maggie cautiously. "We still don't know. We're just trying to find a place," he admitted. Maggie fell silent for a moment, gazing at the crackling fire in the fireplace. Then, as if she had made an important decision, she spoke. "If you'll allow me, I would like to offer an opportunity. I don't have much, but this house has space. You can stay here for a while, help me with some things, and in exchange you'll have a roof over your heads, food, and maybe a little peace." Liam looked at Noah, who seemed enthusiastic about the idea, but the weight of responsibility made him hesitate. He didn't want to put his brother in danger or depend on someone they barely knew. "Why would you do this for us?" Liam asked, his voice firm but not rude. Maggie smiled, and this time her eyes sparkled with something that seemed like gratitude. "Because you remind me of someone I loved very much and lost. Maybe this is destiny, Liam. Maybe you appeared in my life for a reason." Noah squeezed Liam's hand and whispered, "Come on, Liam, please. We deserve this." After a long silence, Liam sighed and nodded. "All right, we'll help as much as we can." The following days were different from anything the brothers had experienced. Liam chopped wood and fixed things around the house, while Noah helped Maggie tend to a small garden covered in snow. They began to create a routine, and for the first time in a long time, they felt part of something. One night, while the three of them sat around the fireplace, Maggie began to tell stories from her youth. She had been a nurse during World War II and, despite the hardships, had met the love of her life, George, a soldier who never returned home. "Life took many things from me, but it gave me the chance to help others. Perhaps that's the only way to find meaning in the losses we carry," Maggie said, looking at the fire as if she could see the past there. Liam listened attentively, feeling a growing connection with that woman. Despite her pain, she conveyed a strength he didn't fully understand, but it inspired him. One night, while Maggie was sleeping, Liam and Noah were in the kitchen talking. "Liam, do you think we could stay here forever?" Noah asked, his eyes shining with hope. Liam wanted to say yes, but he knew life was rarely that simple. "I don't know, Noah, but while we're here, we'll do our best." It was then that they heard a noise from outside. Liam immediately stood up, his protective instincts kicking in. Peering out the window, he saw a figure moving near the barn. "Stay here, Noah," he ordered, grabbing a lantern. Liam stepped out into the biting cold, the lantern trembling in his hands. Approaching the barn, he realized the figure was a man, poorly dressed, rummaging through Maggie's tools. "Hey, who are you? What are you doing here?" Liam shouted, trying to sound brave. The man turned, startled, and ran away, disappearing into the darkness. Liam returned home, still on edge, and found Noah waiting for him at the door. "What happened?" Noah asked, concerned. "Nothing much, just someone trying to steal. But don't worry, it's all fine now," Liam replied, trying to reassure his brother. The next morning, Liam told Maggie what happened. She became serious but didn't seem surprised. "This place is safe, but the world out there will always have its dangers. That's why we need to take care of each other." As Maggie spoke, Liam realized that his life was changing, and perhaps that mysterious woman was more than just a help in their lives. She seemed to know things he didn't understand, but they made him feel that their meeting had not been by chance. One afternoon, Maggie asked for Liam and Noah's help to organize the attic of the house. It was an old, dusty space filled with boxes and antique furniture covered with sheets. While they worked, Maggie showed them an old wooden trunk with rusty locks. "This trunk belonged to my husband, George. I haven't opened it in years," she said with a melancholic look. Liam hesitated, but Maggie smiled. "Open it. I want to show you something." Carefully, Liam opened the trunk, revealing a collection of old items. Letters, black and white photographs, a military medal, and a diary with yellowed edges. Maggie picked up the diary with trembling hands and opened it, showing a page where it was written, "Love keeps us strong, even when everything around us seems to crumble." "George wrote this shortly before he left for the war," Maggie explained. "He believed that as long as there was love, there would be hope." Noah, who had been listening intently, asked, "Do you really think love can change everything, Maggie?" She looked at the boy and answered firmly, "Yes, Noah. Even in the most difficult situations, love is the only thing that gives us the strength to move forward." As Maggie spoke, Liam realized that those words were not just about her past. They seemed meant for him and Noah, as if it were a reminder that despite everything they had lost, they still had each other. That night, while everyone was asleep, Liam woke up to a strange sound coming from outside. He peered out the window and saw the same figure he had spotted in the barn a few days earlier. This time, the man seemed to be trying to open the back door of the cabin. Liam grabbed a piece of wood that was beside his bed and quietly stepped out. As he approached, the man noticed his presence and turned. He was thin, wearing dirty clothes, and had a desperate look. "Please don't hurt me. I'm just hungry," the man said, raising his hands in a sign of surrender. Liam hesitated. His instinct told him to send the man away, but something in the man's voice made him pause. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Liam asked, not lowering the piece of wood. The man sighed. "My name is Samuel. I used to work on a nearby farm, but I've lost everything. I've been sleeping outdoors and was just looking for something to eat." Liam looked at the man for a long moment before lowering the piece of wood. "Wait here." He went back inside and found Maggie in the kitchen, preparing tea. She looked at him with curiosity. "What happened, Liam?" "There's a man outside. He looks desperate. He said he's just hungry," he replied, trying to figure out if he was doing the right thing. Maggie looked at him for a moment and then nodded. "Bring him inside. We can't turn our backs on someone in need." Liam was surprised by the response but obeyed. When Samuel entered, his eyes widened at the sight of the warmth of the fireplace and the food on the table. He thanked them repeatedly as Maggie set a bowl of soup in front of him. "You're lucky to have found these folks, Samuel," Maggie said gently, "and lucky to have crossed my path as well." While Samuel ate, he told his story. He had lost his wife and child during a tornado that destroyed his farm. Without family or money, he started wandering, surviving as best he could. Life has been cruel to me, but thank you for this. I haven't felt human warmth in a long time, he said, his eyes misty. Noah, who was sitting next to Liam, looked at Maggie and asked, "Can he stay here too, Maggie?" Maggie thought for a moment before answering. "Samuel, would you be willing to help with household and garden chores in exchange for shelter?" The man nodded vigorously. "Of course, I'll do whatever it takes." Liam watched everything in silence, feeling a mix of relief and concern. He knew Maggie had a big heart, but he also feared they were exposing themselves to more dangers. Still, something inside him said this was the right thing to do. Days passed, and Samuel began to integrate into the small routine of the cabin. He was hardworking and grateful, helping Liam with the heavier tasks and telling funny stories about his life on the farm to Noah, who laughed like he hadn't in a long time. Despite this, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. It was as if the calm was merely the prelude to a storm. One afternoon, while Samuel and Noah were in the garden, Maggie called Liam for a talk in the kitchen. "Liam, you're a smart boy and have a good heart, but you also carry a weight too heavy for your age," she began. "I want you to know that whatever path you choose to take, I will always be here to help you and Noah." Liam swallowed hard. Maggie's words were comforting, but they also carried a truth he didn't want to face. They couldn't stay there forever, no matter how much that place seemed like a refuge. The world outside continued to call them, and Liam knew that sooner or later, they would have to confront that call. Maggie held his hand and smiled. "But remember, sometimes what you're looking for is closer than you think." Liam didn't fully understand what she meant, but something about that phrase stuck in his mind. Perhaps, just perhaps, he could find what he was searching for without having to go far. Weeks went by, and Maggie's cabin began to feel more like a home than any other place Liam and Noah had ever known. The days were filled with laughter, work, and stories around the fireplace. Maggie taught Noah how to care for the plants in the garden, while Liam learned to fix furniture and tools under Samuel's guidance, who, despite his painful past, proved to be resilient and full of knowledge. However, Liam remained restless. During the quiet nights, he would look out the window, his thoughts tangled about the future. He knew that this refuge couldn't last forever. Sooner or later, the reality of the outside world would catch up with them. One night, while everyone was asleep, Liam heard a strange sound coming from outside. It was the same noise that had woken him weeks before, but this time it seemed closer. He got out of bed, grabbed a lantern, and approached the door. When he opened it, he was startled by a shadow that quickly disappeared into the forest. "Who's there?" Liam shouted, his voice trembling. No answer came, so he went back inside, determined to keep it a secret. He didn't want to worry Maggie or Noah, but a sense of alertness grew inside him. The next morning, Maggie asked the brothers to accompany her to town. It was a rare but necessary trip, as she needed to buy supplies. The town was a few miles away, and the drive passed quickly with light conversation and the sound of Maggie's old radio. When they arrived, Noah was fascinated by the shop windows and the hustle and bustle of people. Liam, on the other hand, was alert, observing the unfamiliar faces and narrow alleys. It was as if his protective instinct never rested. While Maggie did the shopping, the brothers explored the town square. There, they found a man selling handmade toys. Noah was enchanted by a small wooden airplane, but when he realized he had no money, he lowered his head, disappointed. The vendor, an elderly man with gray hair and a kind smile, watched the scene and called Noah back. "Take it, kid. Consider this a gift." "Really?" Noah asked, incredulous. The man nodded. "Sometimes, a simple gesture can change someone's day. Remember this." Noah thanked him with a smile that lit up his face. Liam watched from afar, impressed by the kindness of that stranger. It was a reminder that the world, despite its harshness, still had moments of light. On the way home, Maggie seemed thoughtful as she drove along the winding roads. She broke the silence. You know, Liam, kindness is a powerful force. Often, it is underestimated, but it has the power to transform lives. Liam, still digesting the day's events, asked, "Do you think kindness always brings something good in return?" Maggie smiled, but her gaze turned distant. "Not always, my dear, but even when it doesn't, it changes us inside, and that's enough." Maggie's words echoed in Liam's mind for the rest of the way. He couldn't deny that since they had helped that woman in the snow, their lives had completely changed. That night, while everyone slept, the mysterious noise returned to disturb Liam. This time, he decided to take action. He grabbed the flashlight and stepped out of the cabin, following the sounds to the edge of the forest. After walking a few meters, he found something that made him freeze. A group of 3 men, armed with knives and flashlights, arguing in low voices. "We have to get into that cabin. The old woman must have something valuable stored away," one of them said in a harsh tone. Liam hid behind a tree, trying to control his breathing. His heart was pounding. He needed to alert Maggie and the others, but he couldn't make any move that would draw attention. Carefully, he returned to the cabin and woke up Maggie and Samuel. "There are men outside. They are planning to come in here," he whispered urgently. Maggie, though surprised, remained calm. "Don't worry, Liam. We'll handle this." Samuel grabbed a heavy piece of wood, while Maggie locked all the doors and windows. Noah, still sleepy, held Liam's hand, trembling with fear. "We'll stick together. This house is stronger than it looks," Maggie said, trying to reassure them. The next few minutes were filled with absolute tension. The sound of footsteps outside grew closer. The men began banging on the windows, demanding that they open the door. "Hey, we know you're in there. Make it easy and no one gets hurt," one of them shouted. Maggie, with surprising calmness, replied, "You have nothing to steal here. Please, go away." The men laughed, clearly unconvinced. "Don't make us lose our patience, ma'am." It was then that Samuel, who had stayed near the door, had an idea. He whispered something to Maggie, who nodded, grabbing an old hunting rifle that had been stored in a cabinet. Samuel raised it and aimed it out the window. "Do you want to try something? Because I won't hesitate to defend myself," he said, his voice firm. The men hesitated. After a few seconds of silence, one of them finally responded, "Let's go. It's not worth it." The group disappeared into the darkness, leaving the cabin at peace once more. Maggie, Samuel, Liam, and Noah sighed with relief, but the tension in the air was still palpable. The next morning, Maggie sat with the brothers around the table. "You did the right thing by warning me. We are safe because we acted together. But it's important for you to know that the world is full of people like that. That's why we need each other." Liam looked at Maggie, Noah, and Samuel, feeling a mix of relief and gratitude. Meanwhile, Noah spent more time exploring the surroundings with the wooden airplane he had received in town. He played in the small field behind the cabin, inventing adventures where he and Liam were heroes facing imaginary dangers. For Noah, that place was a magical refuge, but Liam remained concerned. He knew that the safety they had there was temporary. One afternoon, while Maggie was preparing cookies in the kitchen, Liam decided to talk to her. "Maggie, I was thinking, we don't want to cause you problems. Maybe it's better if we find another place," he said, trying to hide the concern in his voice. Maggie stopped what she was doing and looked at Liam with a gentle smile. "Liam, you are a strong boy. but you carry a weight you don't need to bear alone. This house is as much yours as it is mine, as long as you and Noah need it. Liam wanted to believe those words, but the voice of doubt continued in his mind. And what if they come back? Or if something worse happens? I don't want to put you in danger. Maggie placed her hand on Liam's shoulder, her eyes full of understanding. Danger is everywhere, dear. We can't live in fear of what might happen. What we can do is make the most of every moment we have, support each other, and face challenges together. Maggie's words, though comforting, did not erase Liam's unease. He knew they needed to prepare for whatever the future held. That night, while everyone slept, Liam was awakened by Noah. "Liam, there's someone outside again," Noah whispered, gripping his brother's arm tightly. Liam immediately sat up and peeked out the window. However, instead of seeing threatening men like last time, he saw a solitary figure, small and hunched, standing at the edge of the field. It was a woman, covered in a tattered cloak, staring intently at the cabin. "Stay here, Noah. I'll see what it is," Liam said, grabbing the flashlight. He stepped out into the biting cold of the night and walked slowly toward the woman. As he approached, he saw that she was elderly, with a face weathered by time and tired but gentle eyes. "What are you doing here?" Liam asked, trying not to sound rude. The woman looked up at him and replied in a weak voice, "I don't want to cause trouble. I'm just looking for a place to rest. I've walked so much that my feet can't take it anymore." Liam looked at her for a moment before speaking. "Wait here." He returned to the cabin and woke Maggie. "There's a lady outside. She looks like she's alone and needs help." Maggie immediately got up and went to the door. When she saw the woman, her face lit up in surprise. "Helen? Is that you?" The elderly woman smiled as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. "Maggie, it's been so long." Liam watched, confused, as the two embraced. Maggie looked emotional, and tears streamed down her face. "Helen is an old friend," Maggie explained, turning to Liam. "We haven't seen each other in over 20 years. Come in, Helen. Let's take care of you." The woman entered the cabin, and Maggie immediately began preparing hot tea while Samuel and Noah curiously looked at the new visitor. Helen shared that she had lost her home after a series of financial difficulties and, with nowhere to go, had decided to seek out Maggie, her longtime friend, in hopes of finding support. "I didn't know if you would still be here, Maggie, but I had to try," Helen said, holding her friend's hand. "There will always be a place for you here, Helen," Maggie replied with a warm smile. In the following days, Helen began to integrate into the small cabin community. Despite her frailty, she insisted on helping, teaching Noah how to sew small patches and sharing stories from the past that fascinated both the boy and the adults. However, Helen's arrival also brought new concerns for Liam. He knew that the more people were there, the harder it would be to protect everyone. Still, something about Helen's presence seemed to strengthen the bond among them, as if that woman had brought with her a new wave of hope. One afternoon, while Maggie and Helen were talking in the garden, Noah ran to Liam with a piece of paper in his hands. "Liam, look at this. I found it in Maggie's trunk." It was an old photo of Maggie and Helen together, smiling in front of a large farm. On the back, there was a handwritten message. "No matter where life takes us, we will always be together." Liam looked at the photo and then at Maggie and Helen, who were laughing together like two young friends despite all the time that had passed. He realized that even in the face of so many hardships, they had found a way to keep alive the promise they had made to each other. That scene awakened something in Liam. For the first time, he began to believe that it might be possible to find safety and happiness without having to run or fight all the time. Perhaps the answer was right there, in that cabin, in the kindness that connected those very different people bound by something greater. Days began to turn into weeks, and Maggie's small cabin became a refuge of calm and solidarity. With Helen integrated into the group, the house was livelier than ever. The aroma of bread baking in the oven, Noah's laughter, and the stories Samuel told during meals gave the place a family vibe that Liam had never imagined experiencing. But while the others seemed happier with each passing day, Liam remained in a constant state of alert. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. The incident with the men in the barn and the constant fear that the system that had separated them from their parents might find them again weighed heavily on his mind. One morning, Maggie called Liam and Noah for a walk to a hidden lake in the woods. It was a special place for her, where she used to go to reflect and find peace. The brothers, intrigued, accepted the invitation and followed Maggie along a winding, leaf-covered trail. When they arrived, the lake was so calm it looked like a mirror, reflecting the surrounding trees and the blue sky above. Maggie sat on a large rock by the water and gestured for the boys to come closer. "This place has helped me through difficult times in my life," she said, gazing at the serene landscape. "Whenever I felt like the world was falling apart, I came here to remember that, just like these waters, life also finds a way to calm down, even after storms." Liam sat beside her, trying to absorb the words. "But what if the storm never passes?" he asked, his eyes fixed on the lake. Maggie turned to him, her gaze filled with compassion. "The storms always pass, Liam. Sometimes they leave marks, but they also make us stronger. And when the calm comes, it's important to remember that we don't face all of this alone." Noah, who had been playing with stones on the shore, heard the conversation and approached. "Maggie, do you think we'll ever find a real home?" Maggie smiled and placed her hand on Noah's shoulder. "Home isn't a place, Noah. It's where you feel safe and loved. And I think you already have that here, even if you don't realize it yet." As they walked back home, Liam felt divided. He wanted to believe Maggie's words, but the uncertainty of the future still haunted him. It was hard for him to accept that he could fully trust something as fragile as the peace they had found. That night, while everyone slept, Liam was awakened by a knock at the door. His heart raced. He quickly got up and looked out the window. This time, it wasn't a mysterious figure or a group of men. It was a police officer. Liam ran to wake Maggie. "Maggie, there's a police officer at the door. He must be here for us." Maggie, who was already dressed and calm as always, placed her hand on Liam's shoulder. "Let me handle this." She opened the door and greeted the officer, a tall man with a serious but not hostile look. "Good evening, ma'am. My name is Officer Harris. I'm investigating some reports of suspicious activity in the area and would like to ask you a few questions if you don't mind." Maggie nodded with a calm smile. "Of course, officer. Come in and make yourself comfortable." Liam, hidden in the kitchen with Noah and Helen, felt his heart pounding in his chest. He listened to the conversation from a distance, trying to catch every word. The officer explained, "We have received reports of men lurking around the properties nearby. I know this area is quiet, but we want to ensure everyone's safety." "Yes, we had an incident a few weeks ago," Maggie said. "Some men tried to enter my property, but we were able to scare them off. Since then, everything has been calm." The officer took some notes and thanked her for her cooperation. Before leaving, he looked at Maggie with a light smile. "It seems you know how to take care of yourself. But if you need anything, don't hesitate to call us." After the officer left, Maggie closed the door and returned to the kitchen, where Liam and the others were hiding. Liam looked like he was about to burst with questions, but Maggie calmed him down. "He's not here for you, Liam. He was just doing his job. You are safe." Despite her reassuring words, Liam knew that danger was always lurking. He was grateful for Maggie's caution, but his protective instinct remained on high alert. In the following days, Liam began training Noah to defend himself. They used pieces of wood as swords and practiced movements in the field behind the cabin. It was a way to prepare Noah in case something went wrong, but also a way for Liam to channel his own worries. "Liam, do you think we will really need to fight?" Noah asked, trying to mimic his brother's movements. "I hope not, Noah, but it's better to be ready for anything," Liam replied. Meanwhile, Maggie watched from a distance without interfering. She knew that Liam needed to feel he was doing something to protect Noah, even if she hoped they would never need to use those skills. One night, while everyone was gathered in the living room, Samuel began telling a story from his youth, something that brought laughter even from Liam. It was a scene of harmony that contrasted with the concerns hanging over them. However, in the back of his mind, Liam knew that this piece was as fragile as glass, about to shatter. He looked around the room, seeing Noah, Maggie, Helen, and Samuel together, and made a silent promise. He would do everything to protect that little world they had built. But he did not know that the real storm was yet to come. On the other hand, Noah seemed happier than ever. He spent his days helping Maggie in the garden, learning to cook with Helen, and listening to Samuel's stories of adventures from the past. For him, that place was more than a house. It was the family he had always dreamed of having. One afternoon, while Liam was chopping wood around the cabin, Noah ran up to him with an excited expression. "Liam," Maggie said, "we are going to town tomorrow to get some things. Are you coming with us?" Noah asked with a radiant smile. Liam hesitated for a moment. Going to town always brought risks, but he also knew that he couldn't live in fear forever. "Of course, Noah. I'll go with you," he replied, trying to sound confident. The next morning, the group set out for town. The trip was smooth, and like last time, Noah was enchanted by the shops and the people. Maggie took the boys to a small bakery where they bought fresh bread and homemade pies. Everything felt perfect, as if the world had finally decided to give them a break. But while they were in the main square, Liam noticed something that made his heart race. Across the street, two men were standing, talking quietly and looking in their direction. One of them was the same man who had led the attempted invasion of the cabin weeks earlier. Liam grabbed Noah's arm. "Maggie, we need to go. Now." Maggie sensed the urgency in Liam's voice and did not hesitate. They quickly returned to the car and left before the men could approach. "What happened, Liam?" Maggie asked, worried. "I recognized them. Two of the men who tried to invade the cabin were in the square," he explained, still trying to control his nerves. Maggie frowned but remained calm. "Let's stay alert. They don't know where we are. We are safe for now." But Liam knew that wasn't true. If those men were in town, it was only a matter of time before they discovered where the cabin was. That night, while everyone slept, Liam stayed awake, mentally reviewing everything they could do to protect themselves. He knew they couldn't keep living in fear. They needed to prepare for the worst. The next morning, he called Samuel for a talk in the barn. "Samuel, we need to reinforce the cabin's security. I don't want to wait until they show up again," Liam said, determined. Samuel nodded. "I agree. We can reinforce the doors and windows, set up some traps around the property. It won't be foolproof, but it might give us time if something happens." They spent the following days working together, strengthening the cabin's defenses. Helen helped by sewing thick curtains to cover the windows, while Maggie prepared supplies in case they needed to hide or flee. Despite his young age, Noah helped as much as he could, holding tools and carrying wood. As they worked, Maggie tried to keep everyone's spirits up. "No matter what happens, we are in this together. And as long as we are united, we are stronger than any threat," she said with a reassuring smile. One night, while everyone was gathered in the living room, they heard the sound of footsteps outside. Everyone froze, and Liam quickly turned off the lights in the cabin. They remained in absolute silence, listening to the sound of footsteps approaching. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door. "I know you're in there. I just want to talk," said a male voice from outside. Maggie looked at Liam, who nodded before moving closer to the door. He held a piece of wood, ready to defend himself if necessary. "What do you want?" Liam asked firmly. "My name is Thomas. I am Samuel's brother," the man said. "I'm here because I need his help." Samuel, who was at the back of the room, stood up, surprised. "Thomas? Is that really you?" He went to the door and opened it, revealing a tall, thin man in worn clothes with a tired look. "Samuel, you disappeared for months. I've been looking for you," Thomas said, visibly relieved. The two brothers embraced, and Samuel introduced Maggie, Liam, Noah, and Helen. Thomas, while grateful to find Samuel, brought news that left everyone worried. "The men who attacked your cabin are after something specific. I heard rumors in town that they think you have something valuable hidden here," Thomas said, looking directly at Maggie. Maggie frowned. "I have nothing but what you see here. It's just a humble house. Maybe they are mistaken, but that doesn't matter. They are determined, and you need to be ready for when they come back," Thomas warned. The following days were marked by an almost palpable tension. Every little noise in the forest seemed like a harbinger of danger, and everyone in the cabin knew that the men mentioned by Thomas could appear at any moment. Still, no one gave up their tasks. They reinforced every entry of the cabin, set up simple traps around the property, and stocked up on food and water. Samuel and Thomas spent much of the nights keeping watch, taking turns to ensure no one was caught off guard. Liam, despite his exhaustion, helped in every way he could, determined to protect Noah and everyone else. One night, while Maggie and Helen were making tea in the kitchen, Liam sat next to Noah on the floor of the living room. Noah was playing with the wooden airplane he had received in town, but he seemed distracted. "What's wrong, Noah? Are you okay?" Liam asked, concerned. Noah hesitated before responding. "I just keep thinking, why do these bad things keep happening to us? Liam, will we ever have real peace?" Liam felt a tightening in his chest. He knew Noah was trying to understand something he couldn't explain himself. "I don't know, Noah, but what I do know is that as long as we are together, we can overcome anything. No matter what happens, I will always be here for you." Noah smiled faintly, but Liam could see that his younger brother was still scared. He knew he had to protect that smile at all costs. The next morning, the sound of footsteps in the forest broke the silence of the night. Thomas, who was on watch on the porch, ran to alert Samuel and Liam. They quickly woke everyone and gathered them in the living room. "They are here," Thomas said quietly but firmly. Maggie remained calm as always, but her eyes showed that she understood the gravity of the situation. "Everyone to the bedrooms. Close the doors and stay together. Liam, Samuel, Thomas, and I will handle this," she said, taking control of the situation. Liam looked at Noah, held his hands, and whispered, "Stay with Maggie. I'll be back soon. I promise." With a lump in his throat, Noah nodded and ran to the room with Helen. The intruders were 5 men, armed with knives and clubs. They were clearly determined to get into the cabin, believing that there was something valuable hidden inside. "You can make this easier by opening the door, or we can do this the hard way," one of them shouted, banging on the front door forcefully. Samuel, armed with an old hunting rifle, stepped forward. "This house is no place for you. Leave us alone before you get hurt." The men laughed as if the threat was not serious, but when one of them tried to break down the door, he triggered one of the makeshift traps, a board with nails that pierced his foot. He screamed in pain, stepping back while the others tried to help him. "That was a warning. The next will be worse," Thomas said, holding a piece of wood as a weapon. The intruders hesitated, but the leader of the group did not seem willing to back down. "You think you can scare us with that? We'll get in anyway," he shouted. That was when Maggie appeared at the door, holding a lantern that illuminated her determined face. "You've already lost, but you still have the chance to leave here with dignity. Don't do something you'll regret." The authority in her voice seemed to disarm the men for a moment, but the leader still insisted. He stepped forward, but Samuel aimed the rifle at the ground and fired a shot that echoed through the forest. "That was the last warning," Samuel said firmly. "Next time I won't miss." The men retreated, realizing that the resistance was stronger than they expected. Even the leader, now clearly nervous, decided it was better to leave. "This isn't over," he muttered before disappearing with the others into the darkness. When silence returned to the forest, everyone in the cabin breathed a sigh of relief. Maggie looked at Liam, Samuel, and Thomas, grateful for their bravery. "You protected this place. I couldn't be prouder," she said with a soft smile. Liam, however, knew that this was only the beginning. The men could return, perhaps with more strength and determination. He needed to find a solution that ensured everyone's safety. The next morning, as everyone gathered for breakfast, Maggie began to speak. "We can't live like this forever, afraid of when the next attack will happen. We need to think of a way to end this once and for all." Samuel and Thomas agreed. They suggested going to the city to gather more information about the men and find out who their leader was. If they could understand what they were really looking for, perhaps they could find a way to negotiate or at least divert their attention from the cabin. Liam offered to go with them, but Maggie was firm. "You need to stay here, Liam. Noah needs you, and more importantly, I do too." Reluctantly, Liam agreed. He knew Maggie was right, but he hated the idea of staying behind while the others took risks. As Samuel and Thomas set off for the city, Liam focused on helping Maggie and Helen further reinforce the cabin. He taught Noah how to manage the traps and recognize signs of danger in the forest. Despite his age, Noah was determined to help and showed a courage that surprised even Liam. As they worked together, Liam realized that Noah was growing, becoming stronger and more resilient every day. And as much as he wanted to protect his brother from everything, he knew he couldn't prevent Noah from facing the world. By late afternoon, Samuel and Thomas returned from the city with troubling news. The men are connected to a larger group. They think the cabin is a hideout for a treasure that never existed, Samuel explained. "That means they won't give up easily," Thomas added. "But we found out where they gather. Maybe we can use this information to our advantage." The following days were dedicated to formulating a plan. With the information on where the men were meeting, the group began to devise strategies to divert their attention from the cabin. Samuel and Thomas led the discussions, but everyone contributed ideas. Maggie, as always, was the voice of reason, ensuring that the plan was smart and avoided putting anyone in unnecessary danger. "We can't stoop to their level acting violently without need," Maggie said firmly. "Let's resolve this in a way that protects everyone and ends this once and for all." Liam and Noah, who were sitting next to Maggie, listened attentively. Despite the fear they felt, they both knew they needed to trust the group. The idea was simple but risky. Using Thomas's knowledge of the group, they would go to the location where the men congregated, at the edge of an abandoned quarry outside the city, and leave a fake treasure map with coordinates to a remote location. The intention was to make the men believe that what they were searching for was far away, diverting their attention from the cabin. "It's a risk, but it's the best we have," Samuel said. "If they believe it, maybe they'll leave us in peace forever." Maggie hesitated but eventually agreed. If this means protecting our home, then let's do it. Liam insisted on going with Samuel and Thomas to ensure that everything went well, but Maggie was adamant. You've done a lot, Liam. Now it's time to trust us. Stay here and take care of Noah, she said, looking into the boy's eyes. Though reluctant, Liam agreed. He knew Maggie was right, but that didn't make it any easier to see the others leave on such a dangerous mission. The next night, Samuel, Thomas, and Maggie set off toward the quarry. They took the carefully crafted map, which contained false coordinates for a supposed location where the treasure would be buried. Liam and Noah stayed in the cabin with Helen, who was doing her best to keep calm while they waited. Noah asked, "Do you think it will work, Liam? Will they believe the map?" Liam placed his hand on his brother's shoulder and replied, "It has to work, Noah. It's our best chance." When Samuel, Thomas, and Maggie arrived at the quarry, the place was silent, but the tension was palpable. They knew the men could show up at any moment. Samuel and Thomas hid in the shadows, while Maggie approached the entrance of the quarry to leave the map in a visible spot. Before she could leave, however, she heard voices. The men were coming. Maggie hid behind a rock, watching as 5 men entered, led by the same individual who had tried to invade the cabin. They were talking loudly, clearly impatient. "We need to find out where this treasure is soon. We can't waste any more time," the leader said, irritated. That's when one of the men spotted the map. "Hey, look at this. It seems someone has been here." They picked up the map and began examining it. The leader looked at the others and said, "This could be what we're looking for. Let's check these coordinates." Samuel and Thomas, watching from afar, held their breath. Everything seemed to be going according to plan. When the men finally left, taking the map with them, Maggie emerged from her hiding place and signaled to the others that it was safe. "It worked," Thomas said with relief. Maggie, however, remained cautious. "It's not over yet. We need to get back home and stay alert, at least until we're sure they're gone for good." When Maggie, Samuel, and Thomas returned to the cabin, it was already dawn. Liam and Noah were awake, waiting anxiously for news. Upon seeing the group return safely, they sighed with relief. "So, did they believe?" Liam asked, his eyes wide. "Yes, it seems they did," Samuel replied. "But we still need to be careful. If anything goes wrong, we'll revert to the original plan. Protect this place at all costs." Maggie approached Liam and Noah, hugging them tightly. "You were very brave. I'm proud of you both." Noah smiled, but Liam knew that this was still not the end. Even if the men believed the map, there was always the possibility that they would return if they didn't find what they were looking for. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Nobody knew for sure if the men had given up for good or if they were still nearby. To avoid drawing attention, Maggie and the others decided to stay in the cabin and avoid trips to town. Despite the tension, the group stayed united. Liam spent more time with Noah, helping him learn new things and trying to keep his spirits up. Helen continued to sew and tell stories, while Samuel and Thomas reinforced the property's defenses. Maggie, for her part, remained the emotional anchor for everyone. Even in the toughest moments, she found a way to comfort and inspire the group. One morning, while they were working in the garden, Noah pointed to the forest. "Liam, look, there's something shiny over there." Liam followed Noah's gaze and saw something reflecting the sunlight among the trees. He approached carefully and found a small silver necklace hanging from a low branch. The pendant was engraved with the word, "Hope." He took the necklace to Maggie, who examined it with an emotional smile. "Maybe it's a sign, Liam. Sometimes life sends us little reminders that everything will be okay." Liam tucked the necklace into his pocket, feeling a lightness he hadn't felt in a long time. Maybe Maggie was right. Perhaps, after all, they could finally find the peace they had been seeking. The days that followed were quieter, but the group knew the calm was fragile. Maggie, always observant, noticed that everyone still carried an invisible tension. Liam, in particular, seemed restless, as if he were waiting for something to happen at any moment. That morning, Maggie called Liam for a talk on the porch. They sat side by side, and she began to speak in the calm voice that always seemed to bring comfort. Liam, you are young, but you carry a responsibility that many adults could not bear. I see how much you care about Noah, about all of us. But I want you to know that you don't have to do this alone. Liam looked at Maggie, surprised. He had never thought about sharing that burden with anyone. I just feel like if something goes wrong, it will be my fault, he confessed, looking down. Maggie placed her hand on his shoulder. What you need to understand, my dear, is that we are all in this together. This house, this family we've built, only exists because we all contribute in some way. You are not alone. Liam nodded, but Maggie's words would take time to truly sink in. He knew she was right, but years of responsibility had shaped him in a way that was difficult to change. That afternoon, while everyone was busy with their tasks, they heard the sound of a car approaching. Everyone stopped what they were doing, exchanging worried glances. Samuel and Thomas went to the porch, while Liam took Noah and Helen inside the house for safety. When the car stopped, everyone breathed a sigh of relief to see it was not an unknown vehicle but Officer Harris, the police officer who had visited the cabin before. Good afternoon, Mrs. Maggie. Sorry to show up unannounced, but I wanted to talk to you and your group, he said, getting out of the car. Maggie went to meet him with her usual calmness. Of course, officer. Please, come in. Harris sat down in the living room as everyone gathered around. He seemed relaxed, but his tone indicated he was there for a serious reason. I have been investigating the men you mentioned the last time we talked. It seems they are involved in a series of crimes in the area, and our team finally managed to capture them this morning. Everyone's faces lit up with the news. Noah let out a sigh of relief, and Liam felt as if a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders. Does that mean we're safe now? Liam asked, still with a hint of distrust. Harris nodded. Yes, you can breathe easy, but I would say to remain vigilant. We never know when another problem might arise, but for now, you are out of danger. Before leaving, the officer made sure to compliment the group. You all did an incredible job protecting this place. It's not every day we find people with such courage and determination. Maggie thanked him, and when Harris left, everyone discreetly celebrated. Although the immediate threat had disappeared, the experience had brought them even closer together. With the danger past, the cabin returned to being a place of peace. Samuel and Thomas began planning permanent improvements to the property, while Maggie and Helen took care of small repairs and planted new seeds in the garden. Noah, now more confident, spent more time exploring the forest around the cabin, always with Liam nearby to ensure his safety. The others allowed themselves to relax, something they hadn't done in a long time. One afternoon, while the two were sitting by the lake that Maggie had shown them weeks before, Noah said something that surprised Liam. You know, Liam, I think this is our home now. No matter what happens, I feel like this is where we belong. Liam looked at his younger brother, feeling a mix of pride and relief. He knew Noah was right. For the first time, they had a place where they could truly be happy. While the group was gathered in the living room, Samuel brought a box he had found in the attic. It was old and dusty, with Maggie's name engraved on the lid. What is this, Maggie? Helen asked, curious. Maggie opened the box carefully, revealing a collection of letters, photographs, and small objects that belonged to her and George, her late husband. She began to tell stories about the moments they shared, their struggles, and the love that kept them together. Among the letters, Maggie found something she hadn't seen in years: a deed to a piece of land near the cabin. She explained that George had bought that land years ago, but they never had the chance to use it. "Maybe this is a sign," said Maggie emotionally. "We can use this land to expand what we have here, to create something even bigger, a true home for all of us." The idea brought a new sense of purpose to the group. They began to make plans for the land, imagining a space where they could plant more, raise animals, and perhaps welcome others who needed help. Months went by and Maggie's cabin, once a temporary refuge, transformed into a true home for everyone living there. The group, now more united than ever, found not only safety but also a shared sense of purpose. The land that George had left was transformed into a vibrant space. Samuel and Thomas built fences, created gardens, and started planning for animal husbandry. Maggie, with Helen's help, planted fruit trees, and the garden became a place of beauty and sustenance. Noah, with his contagious energy, helped with everything, excited by the idea of seeing the seeds grow and blossom. Liam, for the first time, began to relax. He still maintained his natural vigilance, but now he could smile more, play with Noah, and join in the stories around the campfire without the constant worry of impending danger. On a sunny morning, while everyone was working in the field, the sound of an approaching car caught everyone's attention. Maggie stepped out onto the porch, followed by Liam and Noah, who looked on curiously. It was Officer Harris, this time with a smile on his face and an envelope in his hands. "Good morning, everyone. Sorry to drop by unannounced, but I have something special for you," he said, getting out of the car. He handed the envelope to Maggie, who opened it carefully. Inside was an official letter stating that, due to the group's help in capturing the dangerous men, the city council had decided to reward them with a grant to improve the property. "You've done more than just protect yourselves," Harris explained. "You've helped make this community safer. This is the least we can do to thank you." Maggie looked at the group with tears in her eyes, but her smile showed that these were tears of joy. "Thank you, officer. This means a lot to all of us." With the grant, the group was able to further expand the property. They built a larger barn, installed a rainwater collection system, and even bought some chickens and goats. The land transformed into a small, thriving farm, and the cabin, now renovated, became a symbol of resilience and hope. One afternoon, as the sun set and painted the sky golden, the group gathered around a campfire in the field. Maggie, sitting in her favorite chair, looked at everyone with pride and gratitude. "When you all arrived here, it wasn't just my life that was changing. You brought something to this place that I didn't know it needed: a family. And together, we managed to turn this little piece of land into something extraordinary." Noah, sitting next to Liam, looked at Maggie and asked, "Maggie, do you think Mom and Dad would be proud of us?" Maggie smiled, tears gently streaming down her face. "I'm sure they are very proud, Noah, and I know they would be happy to see how much you've grown, how strong you are, and how much you still have to offer the world." Liam, emotional, held Noah's hand. He knew that even amidst pain and loss, they had found something that many spend their lives searching for: a home, a place where they belonged. Over time, the cabin became more than just a home for the group. It became a place where others also found help. Travelers passing through the area always found a warm meal, shelter, and a word of comfort. Maggie made a point of teaching everyone that kindness is not just something we give, but something that transforms us. Liam, now more mature, began helping Maggie organize everything. He became a role model for Noah, who admired him more than ever. Together, they learned that true strength lies in being willing to help and in accepting help when needed. One night, as Maggie told one last story to everyone around the fireplace, she looked at Liam and Noah with a special sparkle in her eyes. "Life is not always easy," tests us, knocks us down, and challenges us. But it is in these difficulties that we find our strength. And above all, we learn that kindness is the thread that connects us all. It is what transforms strangers into family, pain into hope, and darkness into light. Liam nodded, fully understanding the meaning of those words. He looked at Noah, Maggie, Helen, Samuel, and Thomas and knew, deep in his heart, that no matter what the future brought, he would always have a place to call home.